Thank
Well,
you
good
so
morning.
much. Good morning to you, or good evening to you.
Thank you. I wasn't quite sure where you were located in America, so I hopped on Google Earth and I put in the town and the state, and then I had a virtual drive around your area because I wanted to see what the natural habitat looked like.
Well,
What a
I'm
beautiful
in the
habitat.
I'm we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I'm actually in the middle of nowhere, where I live on a lot of acreage, and so we're very much in the country part of where I live, if you would.
hmm hmm How many acres are you on?
It's a little over 100.
Oh wow.
I love nature, and my husband and I live on a small farm, if you will, and we have a pond and a couple of senior citizen horses and dogs and cats. So I guess I'm obligated to have all those things, right? As a veterinarian.
Well, 100 acres is a lot. In the western parts of Sydney, where my parents are from, I grew up on 5 3/4 acres, and that was fun. But
Oh,
100 acres is a lot bigger than 5 3/4.
it's well, a lot of it is forested. There's about a 12-acre pond, and but it's a good place to just sort of walk and be one with nature as well. So
Mm.
it's a mix of some pasture as well as wonderful forested area. So I just saw some eagles the other day, and I'm dying to find out whether we might have a nest somewhere that I haven't found yet. So to
Wow.
be determined.
My parents were sending me photos of kangaroos that were in their backyard. So there was probably about 15 or 20 of them. And my kids said, "Oh, can we go cuddle the kangaroos?" I said, "You
Oh,
can't cuddle those ones."
no, no.
But what I love about kangaroos is when you translate kangaroo into Chinese, it's a symbolic language. So when you read the symbol of kangaroo, it actually means pouch rat. So it's a
Oh
big
my
rat
gosh.
with a pouch on the front. So symbolically, I get kangaroo, but my children process pouch rat.
That's so funny.
So we have some fun, and I tell them Australian animals' names, and they tell me what it is in Chinese, and it's always something very different, and it'll make you laugh. Like turkey is horji, horji, and turkey, when you break it down, means fire chicken. So it's a really angry chicken.
Oh,
It's like fire. So we
I,
were out collecting
I
eggs
may
the
have
other
to
day.
use I may have to use some of this. I love that.
Yeah, it's so symbolic. It's like aircraft. Fiji, although the symbols and the words are pronounced different, it kind of comes out as flying chicken. It's supposed to be flying machine, but to me, it sounds like flying chicken.
Oh my
So
gosh.
everything has a name.
That- Not as romantic as it should be, I don't think, on that one.
It's one thing to understand the language. It's one thing, but to understand the culture behind it, it's totally different.
Right.
So here, different animals have different symbolism. So obviously, we have the Chinese zodiac. So all of these animals are worshipped. And at the moment, there's a one of the Buddha's birthdays. I think the Buddha's a couple of thousand years old, and the temple that she's in is 400 years old. So there's a
Oh,
big party today. There's fireworks, there's light shows, there's parades going up and down the street. So at the end of the street, there's a big place, and they've got all these animals on display. So the local farmers who are farming the pigs, it's a competition who can grow the biggest pig. Now,
oh my
this might
gosh.
not be symbolism for Americans or Australians, but they fatten the pig up as big as they can, then they slaughter it, and then they pull the skin off. and then they stretch the skin out as far as they can. And so the biggest pig wins. And so that
Oh,
means they're the best farmers. So these pig skins are stretched over the size of like a F100 or an F150 type truck.
oh my,
They just stretch it out, and
oh my,
then the pig's worshipped.
oh, I'm fascinated by this. I'm learning so much from you, Daniel. Thank you
Mm,
so much.
yeah. And when you see the pictures, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a pig. so much skin on it, which is exciting.
Son of a gun. I we obviously, try to grow pigs very large here, but there's not a competition other than, you know, pound of flesh, so to speak. So
Yeah, and then
that's
they get the
interesting.
pineapple and they shove it in its mouth, and I'll send some photos later on. It's an interesting culture, and if you come for the first time, it's probably almost shocking. But for everybody who lives here, all these animals are worshipped in the zodiac. So even me, I think I'm a monkey. My son is a chicken. My daughter is a dragon. My mother-in-law's a snake. My wife's a sheep. My father-in-law's a sheep. so
I'm
when
a
people,
snake, I think.
you're a snake. Good.
Yeah.
So when they interact, they know what your animal symbology is.
Wow.
And even when you go to the spirit man, we went to the Shojing. The Shojing is what's called the soul retriever. So when people have had a fright, when they're anxious, when they've had some bad luck, you go to the Shojing and he brings back your 7 souls. And as part of bringing your souls
What?
back, he's got to figure out what year you're born in. And so he's looking at me tonight and saying, okay, Daniel's a monkey. Highwind's a chicken, Caesar's a chicken, Nikita's a dragon. And even that is intertwined with spiritual blessings.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I never understood the history, but I was always fascinated by it. So
Mm.
I'm really enjoying hearing more about that and understanding more about where that stems from.
The culture's so rich. It's 5,000 years. And so
Yeah.
even for me living here for 14 years, it's still like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this about the chicken. I didn't realize
Right.
this about the snake. And even with matchmaking here, when you go to the matchmaker will have a look at your time and date of birth.
Okay.
They'll have a look at your name and the way that it's written in Chinese. And then they will compare the snake and the dragon. And when it comes to relationships, not all of these animals get along. It's like we've got the border collie that chases the sheep.
Right. Right.
The chicken and the snake aren't friends. So they even look at that and they say, would this couple work based on their animal symbology? Because each of those animals have a different types of behavior and they don't always mix very well. So if you go to the master and your symbol is a conflict to the other person, they'll say, well, based on this match, the chicken and the snake, you're not going to be a great couple. And couples will separate because of that. And there'll be no offense at all. Oh, you're a chicken, you're a snake, this is not going to work. Let's move on.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so now I have to ask, do people ignore that and then regret it later?
They ignore it and they regret it. they absolutely do. And when you read the tabloids, which my wife will translate it for me, they'll talk about the celebrity couples. And it might be the rat that got married to the cow. And then they break it down saying it's because of this astrology that it's not working. So, all the famous people and their astrology sign.
Well, I'm not sure I'm convinced that's all astrology on that side, but that's fascinating because that's not many of those relationships work in general in Hollywood, or it seems that way. So that's really curious. I love that. Now I'm going to have to talk to my husband about this.
Well, it's probably a good topic because one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about today was human and animal bonding. So we've got humans, we've got Chinese astrological signs. Let's have a conversation about that. Um, what is the importance of human and animal bonding?
I think that what I'm excited about is that, we've talked about this in veterinary medicine for a long, long time. There's an organization called HABRI, which is the Human Animal Bond Research Institute. And not a lot of people are aware that they've actually been doing research on this for quite some time. And there are others that are doing research now. But it's one of the most powerful things that I like to touch on is the health benefits, because and I could talk about this for a long time, but they do everything from help lower blood pressure. They help people get through cancer treatments successfully. Their survival rate for someone owning a pet going through advanced therapy of any kind is significantly higher than those without pets. We obviously, we talk about PTSD of all kinds, whether it's military, childhood trauma, you name it. We see again and again what a role pets can play in healing, and not just comforting but healing. And so it's an incredible relationship that I think we are just really beginning to more deeply explore that. And I can remember years ago, I had clients that were suffering from some sort of an illness, whether it was they were immunocompromised in some way. And of course, the first thing the doctors would say is on the human side that, you need to get rid of your pets. And I would just shake my head, because even the thought of them having to remove themselves or their pets from their household immediately changed their thought processes, their focus on getting well and things like that. And so what we try to do is talk about how do we do this safely, so that we don't, run the risk, but that you benefit, the benefits are still there. And I was just in England with my husband not too long ago, and we visited an organization called the Waltham Research Institute. And they do a lot of different research, but in the last few years, they've started actually doing more research on the human-animal connection and what that means and what the benefits are. And we started having conversations as well. And so I'm loving that this is becoming more and more in the forefront, because I think that it's more powerful than we often recognize in terms of what they do for us and what they do for, I think, frankly, what they do for children, children growing up with pets. And that relationship is very different than that of the relationship we have with our human cohorts. And it teaches them a lot of different things, right? But it all, teaches them obviously responsibility. It teaches them, how to interact with other species. It also, I think, in some ways, it kind of teaches us how maybe we should behave, when we're interacting with our human counterparts. And so there's so many different facets to that I'm really enjoying exploring what that really means. We hippotherapy, and how much that helps children with disabilities, adults with disabilities, as well as PTSD. And it's dramatic and powerful to watch the changes over time. So I hope that to a certain extent sort of at least touches on the significance of that. It's so powerful. And you have pets, and you know what they do for you and your family.
Mm. interesting you mentioned PTSD. It was in 2010. My wife had an accident on an aircraft, and it left her with a permanent disability. And for two and
Oh,
a half years, she was in rehabilitation, and she went through three major knee reconstructions. And it was on that exact day of the accident, when she got home from the hospital, I gave her a British Shorthair cat.
oh my gosh.
And that cat was with her the whole time that she was going through the operations
Oh,
and the healing, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, because she was suffering PTSD.
oh, sure.
And on the day of the accident, I gave her a British Shorthair cat. It was waiting there already. I'd got it the day before. And in the Middle East, where she had the accident, we were taken very good care of by Emirates Airline. And during that 2.5 year period, I had to keep working. And as a senior flight steward, I would fly all around the world. So it might be a Monday and I'll go to London. I'll come back Wednesday. I'll go to New York. Sunday, I might do a 9-day trip to Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and come back. So as she's going through the healing process, the only person in the house was her and the cat.
Yeah.
And it was that one soul, it wasn't just an animal, it was a soul in the house. And over the years, what I noticed was the cat knew more about her secrets than I did. She
Yeah.
would cry in front of the cat, but she wouldn't cry in front of me. And so our cat had been with us for 2.5 years. And then eventually, my wife moved back to Taiwan and we shipped the cat to Taiwan and it continued living with us. But the cat was also there for the pregnancy of our first daughter. And then the cat was there for the birth. And the cat became a protector of
Oh,
our,
yeah.
of our daughter. And then we had our son, and the cat was around. Now, the cat unfortunately passed away, but on Sunday night, probably around about 11 o'clock, I could hear my wife crying in bed. And I rolled over and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm missing the cat. I'm missing Mina cat." And so,
Oh,
even though that the cat might have passed away a year ago, she's still grieving the loss of the cat because they had such a close bond.
that is so powerful. And I hear those stories all the time. And I think that there, you talk about that, the soul, right? And I think that
Mm,
there are certain pets that are brought into our lives for a reason. Obviously for a season, because they frankly don't live long enough, but they're brought into our lives for a season. And I think that if we're open to that, that they help us through that season, that period, that struggle, whatever it is that we're dealing with. And they do provide something that we as humans just can't offer. And it is something, frankly, it's spiritual. And so I 100% acknowledge that. And your wife, gosh, that's a testament to her in terms of her resilience. And that must have been quite a struggle, for her. So I admire her ability to get through that, not just physically, but like you said, emotionally.
mm,
That's such a powerful story.
mm. With with PTSD, the individual's always suffering in silence all the
Yeah.
time. It's a constant, and you can't escape it. It's not something like somebody says, "Leave the baggage at the door." It's something that constantly gets triggered within you, and especially when you're going back in for operations. And the cat was really interesting. That was Mina. She was a British Shorthair. Is I know from the work that I do, tears of joy have different chemicals to tears of sadness or
Yeah.
depression. And it was so common that the cat would come and try to lick the teardrops off the face.
Oh, oh my
And
gosh.
And it was very soothing. And my wife's PTSD and the depressions that came along with it was very severe, to the point that she was also considering ending her life. So to have that soul support there all the time when I wasn't there was very important for her. So now that the cat has passed on, she still honors the soul of the cat.
Yeah.
So when it came time for the cat to be, she passed away. When we bury animals here in Taiwan, we often have a full funeral procession, not the possession, procession. So we will take them to a crematorium. At the crematorium, they'll take them through a Buddhist burial ceremony. So you're doing specific Buddhist prayers to honor the soul because it's a part of God. The prayers are done by a monk. And then once the animal's ready for cremation, we do another procession and we're calling the spirit of the cat. So as the cat's being taken to the crematorium, to the furnace, we're calling the cat and telling it to run, run, for the soul to run so the soul doesn't get burned. We're going to cremate the body, but we want the soul to leave the body. And they cremate the animal. And after the cremation, you go back and one of the, I guess we can call them an undertaker, will then take the bones and show you the bones of the animal. And they'll say, well, this is the cat. I could tell you looked after it really well, because when they see the bones, they can obviously see something that you'd be trained to see, but the health of the cat, they could tell by the teeth and the other bones. And so they tell a story. And then they crush the bones up, and then you walk on another ceremonial procession, and then you bury the cat with all the prayers. And that happens for a lot of animals.
That is beautiful. That, it's what that's so powerful, because it reminds me of stories, obviously, but one of the things that we don't do well, that I hope that we can have an impact on, is how we process and grieve the loss of a pet. Very often in our profession, I mean, I think that one of the most important things that we do as veterinarians, if you're in a general practice, is how you handle that process, the before, the during, and in my opinion, the after. But very often we don't handle that well. Once it's done, it's done. And we don't acknowledge the grief, and how to work through that grief. Everybody does that differently, right? But I think that what you're describing is so powerful, and it gives that, that person or that family an opportunity to truly say goodbye, and perhaps see that soul or that spirit in another form, in some time in the future. And I hear that a lot. People say, I know without a doubt that I either saw something that represented or felt the presence, of a long lost pet in different forms, different opportunities, different spaces. And so I find that fascinating and frankly beautiful.
I want to get something. I'll show you something
Okay.
really cool. So just over to my left, there's an area of our house, and we worship the ancestors. So photos of the grandparents who have now passed away, and also photos of our cat who's passed away. So this picture, this is pretty cool. So you can see it here. Obviously, that's me. That's my wife. That was
Yes.
our British Shorthair cat. And that's the 3D scan of my eldest daughter in my wife's belly.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
So when we shipped our cat from Dubai back to Taiwan, so she felt psychologically safe in the aircraft, this photo traveled inside the cat carrier.
Oh my God.
10,000 kilometers. And what my wife said, she said, I want to have this in the cat carrier so the cat feels safe. So if she feels
Oh,
lonely or sick, she can see me, my wife. She remembers who she is, or our daughter.
oh, I love that. I love that.
So that picture there is 13 years old, maybe more, 13 and a half years, and that was inside the cat carrier. She went 10,000 kilometers from the Middle East back to Taiwan.
Oh, what a relationship. I mean, I'm impressed. I am. We could learn a lot from that.
Well, I think when I chose the cat for my wife, we had already had a trauma. And the trauma was we had started dating and we went out shopping one day. And there's a place called the Mall of the Emirates. And at the Mall of the Emirates, that's the famous place in Dubai where you can do snowboarding and snow skiing in the middle of the desert. So we went there and we went for a walk behind the Mall of the Emirates and we found a pet shop. And we went in there with no intention at all. And there was a British blue cat in there. And I saw this cat and I'd never really seen one before. I went, wow, this is really cute. And my wife's like, I want the cat. And I said, well, we're only dating. It's probably a little bit too early to have a commitment cat. And she's like, I want the cat. I want the cat. And so we walked out with our British Shorthair. And we called him Ezekiel. My wife wanted to call him Zach. And she said, we'll call him Zach. And I said, no, let's call him Ezekiel. And she said, why can't we call him Zach? And I said, because somebody's going to ask if Zach wants to play ball. They'll say, do you want to play ball, Zach? And she's like, what's that got to do with him? I said, well, in Australia, it's a ball sack. So we got him that day. And I don't know if you know much about the Middle East, but when I first went there, I only knew it as a desert. I didn't realize it was on the Gulf and it's surrounded by water. So the first day, me and my little British Shorthair kitten are walking down the beach in Dubai. And my wife has a photo. She said, I've never seen a man walking his cat on the beach. So we got the cat. We had him for maybe about 72 hours and he started to get a little bit sick. And his breathing started to labor. And it looked to me that he was almost going into like a comatose state. And so we quickly rushed to the local vet, which was called the European Veterinary Clinic, and it was on Sheikh Zayed Road. And we got there and I ran across the crossing in front of the cars and I said, stop, we have a cat. And I ran into the vet and the vet said that the cat had isospora coccidia.
Okay.
And so that was from the cattery. And
Yes.
so it must have been something exchanged through fecal matter and now had got into the organ systems and then into the brain.
Oh,
And so
no.
within about 6 hours, the cat was dead.
Oh,
So we were traumatized and we went back to the pet shop and we said, hey, we bought this cat. We've had it just for a short time and it's dead. And the vet said that it's got isospora coccidia. I think that's how you pronounce it. And they said, oh, we don't think that's from the kennel or the cattery. And they went to the cattery and all of the cats had it.
yeah.
And so we were traumatized. And so this was our second cat. And unfortunately, we discovered the same thing with her. She had the same, is it a bacteria or something like that?
It's a
Am I saying it
parasite,
correctly?
actually.
Parasite, yeah.
Yeah. It's treatable. If you detect it early, it's very treatable generally, but yeah, it can be deadly. And I just, that's heartbreaking.
So we were traumatized. And then this was our replacement cat. And we found out she had it. But she was family. She was the first child. And
Of
she was
course.
there for our
Of course.
engagement. She was there for our marriage and the birth of our children.
You know, one of the beautiful things that I wanted to acknowledge is that you started out, with having pets, and then you moved into having, having a family, children, but your pets remained and remain such a critical part of your family, and that's not always the case, at least in the United States. And so I think that sometimes they kind of get pushed to the side when people
Mm.
start to have family members. That's not always true, but I want to acknowledge that it's that relationship doesn't have to change, and it should only get better,
Mm.
as your family grows. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, because again, it's such a powerful
Mm.
testament to the relationship that you have with your family, as well as with your pets.
Mm. And for me, I grew up on 5 3/4 acres, and our animals were always outside. So
Right.
humans lived inside, animals live outside, and we had peacocks and peahens and
Oh, wow.
chickens, uh, and we had some cattle as well. But they were always outside. But with our animals, because we have apartment living in the Middle East and here, they're always inside. So all the rules for me with animals have now been broken, including the first one that my dad told me, because my dad's a farmer, and he said, Daniel, never name the cows. And I said, well, Auntie Helen, she owns a dairy, and Auntie Helen and Uncle Gary, they've got a dairy, and every time they get a new cow, they name it after one of the nephews or nieces. So my brother's Ben, so there's a Benita, and that's a female cow, and then there's another cow after me. It's Danielle. And he said, yep, never name the cows. And so my dad had some cattle, and there was one black cow that really had a liking with him. And it was more than a cow, it was like a dog. And if dad went down the back, it'd follow him around. And eventually he built a relationship, and he'd give it a little tickle behind the ears and a pat on the nose. And he called it Blackie. So Blackie's his new best friend, and he's broken his rule.
Right.
Now he's fattening the cows up for slaughter to eat. And on the day that he's got to take them to the abattoir, they won't get in the truck. But the one that's following him around the yard is Blackie, his best mate.
Oh,
And
no.
so Blackie willingly hops into the truck and wants to go to the abattoirs. And he's just feeling this incredible guilt the whole time because he said, don't name them. He calls it Blackie. And now he's got to slaughter Blackie.
So
And then the
how does
meat
that
come home, and he's like, oh, we're going to
so
eat Blackie. Oh.
oh my gosh. You see, so I thought that story was going to end differently. Oh my
Ended in guilt.
I joke about that, when people say, why don't you have chickens, or, why don't you, have some farm animals and stuff like that? And I said, because if I name something, that's it. We're they're not they're not leaving. We're not eating them. We're not doing anything to harm them in any way.
Mm.
And I have no issues with people doing that, but I can't do it. And
Mm.
so it's so funny that your dad said don't name them, because
Mm.
internally I think he knew that it was going to create a challenge for him to do what he had to do when the time
Mm.
came. God bless him for that.
It's like the chicken who gives you an egg. It's a short-term offering.
Yes. Yes.
but having the whole thing is quite permanent.
That's very permanent. That's much different. I'd
You,
love
you're
to have the
mentioning
eggs, but that's about
yes.
it for me.
You're mentioning before about these pets are friends. There was a beautiful comment that I heard, and uh, before we got our golden retriever, um, we had a look at YouTube, we had a look at social media, and we're having a look at what type of pet is a golden retriever? Is it a good family pet? Is it a good indoors pet? What do you need to have in place to make the animal happy? And there was a really good quote, and they were saying that a lot of golden retrievers might have an average age of, let's call it 14 years. And in this video, it said, your golden retriever is going to be your best friend for a short time, but you are going to be his best friend for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard that before. And it really put it into perspective. Yeah, I'm going to have this mate for 12, 14 years, but I'll be his best mate for his entire life.
Right. Right.
And before I took on that responsibility, I thought, yeah, I better be a good pet owner. I better be a good pet dad, because this is for life for him. There's a major commitment for him.
You're speaking my language now. It's one of the things that I talk about a lot, is that, before you decide to get a pet, you need to consider that it's a commitment. And, you're not talking about a short-term, for them, a short-term relationship. It's, like you said, a minimum of, you'd like to think a minimum of 10 to 15 plus years. And I think it's important that people truly consider that. And to your point, consider, is this the right pet for my lifestyle, my family, my situation? And I wanted to stress that, because I think a lot of people decide to get a pet very spontaneously, without necessarily thinking about what that means and what the responsibilities are, what the financial responsibilities are in addition to that. And a movie comes out with a Labrador, a Dalmatian, and then everybody wants one until they realize what they have and what the requirements are for that individual breed or species or whatever. And so it's, again, another testament to how deliberate you have been in deciding, what and which type, which breed are we going to add to our family, and how that's going to enhance our family and make it better.
And animals don't live up to your fantasy. And I experienced that firsthand. I was traveling in Carcassonne in South France. And Carcassone is a walled city. So it's like a kingdom.
Okay.
And it has a bit of a moat around the outside, and a big walled city with a citadel in the middle. And I was there, and I was around about 22 or 23 years of age, sitting in the city. And I saw a lady walking two dogs. And they were the ugliest things I've ever seen in the world, but the cutest thing. And I said, I'm so sorry to interrupt. What type of dog's that? She's like, oh, these are French bulldogs. I'm like, that's the ugliest, but the cutest thing I've ever seen. Like, that's just so cool. And I'm not much of an artist, but I drew a picture of this dog in my notebook. And I thought to myself, one day I'm going to get a French bulldog. So that was we'll call it 2023. And so for years, I thought about this dog, kind of fantasized what it would be like to have this dog, and didn't know anybody with it, because in Australia at the time, they were like $6,000. It was like insane price for these dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, you got to be out of this world to pay $6,000 for a dog. But anyway, it kept growing on me. And Nini and I, when we lived in Dubai, we found some French bulldogs at the kennels, and we went and looked at them, but we didn't feel it was the right thing for Dubai because it was so hot and they'd have to live inside in the air conditioning all the time. So we put it off. But then one day we traveled to Taiwan, and we went to the night markets, and I started to see these French bulldogs, and they'd become really popular here in about 2010, 2011. And I said to her, that's the dog we looked at in Dubai, but they look even better here. And she said, you don't want a dog, you don't need a dog. But then right across from my apartment, the dog breeder started to breed French bulldogs. And I looked out of my building, and I saw this little face, this stocky body, these big sharp ears, teeth hanging out here. And I said, we're going to have that. It looks like a bat and a dog mixed together.
Yes.
And so we got it, and it was $6,000, and we brought it home. and it was a puppy. But then she got a little bit older, and I was traveling. So I'm traveling around the world for work, coming home, and this dog is very dominant.
Yeah.
And because I'm away, it thinks she rules the house.
Yeah.
And I tried to smack her on the snout. They don't have a nose, so that didn't work. Tried to smack her on the bum. That only made her more aggressive. And one day I'd been traveling to the United Kingdom, back to Dubai, bought a lovely woolen suit for about $3,000. Flew home. I was wearing it on the aircraft. Got home. The dog jumped up and attacked me and bit me on the inside of the leg. And I've got to go to the hospital. And my wife said, "What did you do to the dog?" And I said, "I've just got home. I'm wearing my new woolen suit. It's $3,000. She's jumped up. She's bit me through the suit on the leg. And she's ripped a huge hole in this brand new $3,000 suit." She said, "Well, what's the suit made out of?" I said, "Wool." She said, "She probably thought you were a sheep."
Oh, no.
We had this
no.
dog for 10 years, and it had its own personality. And I didn't understand the personality, and it didn't match my fantasy or my expectation. And so it was a bit of a love-hate relationship. We loved her like a naughty child, but we had to go to hospital many times because she bit us all.
God bless you. God bless you. Now I'm coming back to the whole zodiac thing, and that maybe we should assign signs to different breeds, zodiac signs, so that we can pair people up with the right pets, because that's one of the breeds that not only does it have specific behavioral traits that don't necessarily come out immediately, but they also have significant, you probably know this now, but significant health challenges because of, the way they were created, frankly. And so you not only you invest a lot of money in this breed, which, by the way, they're extremely popular in the United States, and you invest a lot of money, and you don't necessarily know about those behavior traits and how to manage that. And then you find out that they have, breathing difficulties, they have throat difficulties, they have spinal difficulties, they have other orthopedic difficulties, and those all come with emotional but financial challenges as well. And so I try to educate people, like, because I love that breed. I love it. I won't have one for all those for all those reasons. I don't think we're necessarily, like you say, compatible, but I think that they're the coolest breed. I love them, and I always want people to understand, you got to know what you're getting before you make this commitment. So you made many trips to the hospital.
All of us.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm telling my family, my friends, and they're like, "If that was Australia, the dog would be put down." And I said, "Well, here in Taiwan," I said, "we're afraid of the Buddha because this dog has its own soul. It has its own personality from the Buddhism perspective. The dog's perfect. But if we were to put it down and end its life early, we might get punished in the afterlife." And so we would say to the dog, "You're lucky you live in a Buddhist house, and you're lucky that me and mum are scared of the Buddha, or you'd be put down." And so it was like this bizarre relationship. And I went to the breeder after about 5 years, and I said to my wife, I said, "I'm really pissed." I said, "Let's go talk to him." And we went over and talked to him. We said, "Look, this dog is aggressive." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah, she's really aggressive. She's biting all of us, and I can't tell her what to do. If I try to close my door, she attacks the door. If I give her a whack on the bum, she'll go berserk. She'll guard the fridge. She'll do all these crazy behaviors." And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "The mum is really angry." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And I said, "Well, tell me about the mum." And he was talking about the different breeds and kind of how he interpreted it was that it was kind of like a fighting breed. And that was kind of like in the bloodline of the dog, like that aggression, that bullish behavior. And he said, "I'm really sorry, but it's in the bloodline." He goes, "You're just going to have to put up with it." So we hit the jackpot in terms of the health, but we got the mental health problems. And that dog had PTSD 100%.
Oh my
But
gosh.
she got the full burial ceremony. When she passed away, we had the Buddhist prayers, the ceremony, the creation. She's got her own plot. We've probably got ashes over here still, but she was entitled to it all because of the Buddhist culture. And I said to her before she died, I said, now you got to deal with the Buddha.
What another great story. These stories are fantastic. I'm planning on you're right. She was lucky to be
She
with,
was lucky.
not just lucky to be there, but with you guys, and the commitment that you have. That is what a tremendous story. I
A
can't wait to
lot of
share all of this.
yeah, a lot of people, they dump their animals, and we used to see this in the Middle East. I was very privileged that a good friend of mine, one of his close friends, had a private zoo. So they had white tigers in the zoo. And the locals in the Middle East would think it was cool to get a white tiger as a pet.
Oh
So
no.
they'd get the cub, and then they'd realize, like, after a year, this thing is like 100 kilos, 150 kilos. And so I was invited to a private zoo where they had these white tigers, and these things were massive, like up close.
Oh
I was
yeah.
patting it. Its front paw was like this big, and and it was massive. It was like 150 kilos, and it was just a kitten. And so in the Middle East, people would have these inside their houses. They'd have them defanged and declawed, and then when they
Oh,
got too big, they would just dump them in the desert.
oh
And my
no.
friend's friend had a private zoo, and people would do that with their dogs because they're
Mm.
expatriates. They go there for a short time, and when they leave, they just dump their pets in the desert. And it was always a problem in the Middle East. So for us, we're like, okay, this is our responsibility. We chose the dog, but we're gotta see it out to the end.
That's sad to hear those things. I always wonder because again, it's one of the things I talk about is you know, what is fair and what is right for the individual pet, and what are what makes good pets, what doesn't make good pets, and what's fair to them as well. And I think that that fantasy, right, that some people want to live is at the detriment of whatever that
Mm,
species is. And so I've always been curious about that, and you just kind of clarified a couple of things for me, because you see those stories on the internet, and you wonder how does this story end? and
mm,
and it can't end well, either for that animal or for the person, in many instances, because they are inherently, I mean, they're still wild animals, and
mm,
you can't take that out. You
mm,
can't take that out of them. And so that's so sad to me.
mm. One of the patterns in our house, I said to the family, if we have any animals, the Tolsons have a rule that all the animals' names have to start with the letter M. So we've had Mina, who was a British Blue. We had Mew Mew, who was the French Bulldog. We got Mac, who's a green-eyed British Blue, and then we got Murray, the Golden Retriever. And Mac is a rescue cat. And it was in the middle of the pandemic that I would go down to the veterinary surgeon, and because we're getting our other cat, Mina, attended to. And I went out the back of the clinic, and I was just having a look at the other cats. There was some Maine Coons, there was some local cats, and then there was this British Blue. And it was just this striking blue color, but these big green eyes are like
Oh,
emeralds. And I looked at this cat and I said to the kids, come and have a look at this British Blue. He's so handsome. And so we went in there and he had his paw upside down and his paw out of the cage. And so he had those little black paw pads, and we
oh,
gave him a little pat. Anyway, we got our cat, and I came back around about 3 months later. We got our cat checked up. I went out the back, And I looked in the cage and I said, "This is the same British Blue that was there 3 months ago." And he looked at me with those big green eyes, with those sharp ears, and he put his paw out of the cage.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
gave his paw, those little black paw pads, a little pat. And I said to Dr. Leo, which is our vet, I said, "This cat's been here for a long time." He said, "Yeah, just waiting for the paw, his grandmother to come and pick him up." I said, "Okay, rightio." I went back there about 6 months later. So this is a total of 6 months later, and he's still in the cage.
Oh my gosh.
And I said to Dr. Leo, I said, "What's happening?" And he said, "Xiao Peng's paw has abandoned him." I said, "Well, what's Xiao Peng?" He said, "Small and fat." That was his name, Xiao Peng. And I said, "Well, what happened to the grandmother?" Well, the grandmother, their son said, "You shouldn't have this cat. We live on a tea farm. Get rid of it." So they just dumped it at the vets. And I said
Oh,
to my kids, I said, "This is a British Shorthair, and I personally like them." And I said, "They're a very expensive cat." And I said, "It's a shame to see it in this cage for so long." So I got talking to Dr. Leo and I said, "What's up with the cat? Like, is there something wrong?" He said, he's had a tumor in his bladder. So he leaks urine." And I looked at this cat who keeps putting its paw outside of the cage. And I said to my kids and I said to my wife, I said, "I can't handle seeing this cat in this cage anymore." I said, "Let's negotiate with the vet." And so we made a deal that if the grandmother didn't come back to get him, that we would take joint custody with the vet, because the vet had grown and had a real liking to him after about 7 months. And so we come to an agreement with the vet that we would take him home and he'd live with us. He would part sponsor the medication because he had some complications, and he'd remain our vet. So we brought Mac home. And so at that stage, we had two British Shorthairs, one that was a rescue cat with a disability. And he's been with us since. So he's been with us for 3 years, and he's just the sweetest cat. He doesn't make a noise. He never gives us any problems. Most of the times, I don't even see him in the house. So I walk into the kitchen, I'm like, "Oh, I've got a cat,"
oh
because
my
he
God.
he just has his little place where he sits, and he is just the perfect soul. And you can sell it. You can tell him at a soul level. It's a sweet little soul. And when I walk into the house and I know he's here, you can feel his vibe. You can feel his energy, and it's always a
Yeah.
positive vibe. And it's like we rescued him. We gave him a second opportunity at life. We got him out of the cage, and now he just gives us good vibrations every day.
I think he 100% knows that you have changed his life. And and I think it's an expression of gratitude.
Mm,
And I think that's, again, it's another testament to their spirit, to their soul, because I everything that I have are rescues, and obviously doing what I do, and I find that each and every one of them, whether it's a dog, a cat, or a horse, they they just know,
mm,
and they feel it, and therefore, we feel it as a family, and
mm,
each one offers something very unique in terms of what they provide, as you already more than understand that. But I think that it's if we're open to it, it's something that's very, very powerful. And I'm
mm,
forever going to probably rescue, just because there's just so many opportunities. And I like to say that God has always put them in my lap. I've never really looked for a pet. They've always just come to me. And it's one of those things where when it happens, I just know this. I'm meant to have this cat. I'm meant to have this dog. I'm meant to have this horse. And I don't take that for granted, but I think you have to be open to that as well. So
mm.
I love that you recognize that, that I think he's just grateful. I think he's just truly grateful.
Are you familiar with the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins? He wrote a book called Power versus Force and another one called The Spectrum of Human Consciousness. Are you familiar with his
No,
work?
no, I'm
This is
not.
really cool. It's based in kinesiology. And David Hawkins, he said, have you ever felt that you like animals more than humans?
Mm.
And it was an interesting comment. I was like, yeah, well, if I had to answer it honestly, probably yeah. And what he said is that the average human resonates at a conscious level of around about 200 and below. So the consciousness level of a human is normally down around fear, guilt, and shame. And these have a very
Yeah.
low consciousness level. Fear is about 150, guilt and shame around about 20 or 30. So it's a very low level of consciousness. And that's where about 80% of the world's population live, under 200. And when they were using when he was writing the book and they were using kinesiology, they were testing the frequency of animals. And they
Okay.
said that your average household pet, your cat or your dog, calibrates at a consciousness of around about 250 hertz. So their vibration, their spirit, their energy is higher than the average person. But when like a golden retriever wags its tail or the cat starts to purr, they calibrate at a conscious level of around about 500. And that's the level of love. And he
Yeah.
says this is why a lot of people love their pets, but they don't necessarily like humans so much.
That's
And it's the consciousness level.
well
And when
said.
we see Mackie purrs, and you can feel that frequency. And when we see Murray the golden retriever wagging his tail, you can feel that vibration lift immediately.
Oh, there's a serotonin change immediately,
Mm,
and I think that that's again, it's something that many don't understand necessarily or recognize. There's a prayer that I don't know if it was an unknown person that wrote it, but it was dear Lord, please let me become the person my dog thinks I am. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's very poignant.
mm. Could you talk to us about serotonin and things like oxytocin? Because what I've heard is a golden retriever, the way that they were bred and the way that they were formed, they release higher levels of oxytocin. And that type of emotion is very contagious, although it's a chemical. The emotion becomes very contagious to humans. What is that human and animal bond at a chemical level? What's the
I
science
think
behind it?
I think that there is that's there is a lot of science behind it, and when you go through the process of and they've done that where you've tested those hormone levels, even I believe growth hormone as well, which affects our psyche and our mental state. There's an immediate effect when a person is exposed to a dog or a cat. And golden retrievers are sort of, I hate to say it, but no pun intended, but a bit of the golden standard, if you will, of that unconditional love. And so they are representative, probably more so than many other breeds and species. And then I would say that equine are really high, if not higher, on that list in terms of the actual chemical changes that can occur even at a distance, even without touch, because a horse is they recognize from 100 yards away what you're going through, what you're feeling, and it's so powerful to watch a human who may be undergoing some significant trauma, and literally you can not only is it scientific, but you can watch the change in their breathing rate, their heart rate, all of those things, blood pressure, the positive hormonal changes. It's irrefutable. It's irrefutable. And it's measurable. I think that it's again one of the more powerful healing experiences that we can have, more so than any medicines that are out there.
Mm. I think these horses talk to each other because one spreads the rumor to the next that I'm afraid of them, and they know it before I get there.
Yes. Oh, oh my gosh, Daniel, they know it. They know it. And they have a powerful ability, very spiritual, very intuitive ability. And
Mm.
I've learned more, people have heard me say this, I've learned more about leadership and human interaction and emotional intelligence from particularly one of my horses over the years who has since passed away than any leadership course, than any cultural course, than any business course I've ever taken. And that holds true for all species, but in particular, I learned so much from her. I can remember so many experiences with her, but I lost her son who was born on this property. She came from a very horrible situation, and I rescued her, and she was pregnant, and so he was born here. Well, he died very suddenly, and I was out of town, and so I came back from being out of town, and immediately I went out, into the pasture, and she came right up to me, and you could tell that we were both grieving, and she had been eating, and she was a very strong leader of there's a difference between dominance and leadership in horses, significant difference. And she was a true leader. And I remember her stopping and coming over to me, and we just sat there, in silence, and and it was I can't remember the amount of time, but we were clearly, processing together. But I will tell you something. The millisecond that my mental state, or I was distracted by another thought that creeped in, she walked away, and she said, that's that it's time to move on. And it was a very, very powerful spiritual moment, because they have to grieve in the wild. They have to grieve very quickly.
Mm.
And I think that she sensed that I had my thought had shifted, and she said, okay, that's enough. Let's move on. And and she walked away. And I think that was one of the most powerful teaching moments for me, in terms of how we process grief, and how they process grief, and how they allow us to process grief. And it was something that I used to talk to my clients about, in terms of how we grieve and how they grieve, and how very often their grieving is longer, because they're trying to help us get through
Mm.
that period that we need. So it's an interesting exchange,
Mm.
but a very, very powerful one.
Mhm. We can describe self awareness as having empathy or understanding for yourself. And we can call social awareness having empathy for others. So, in this instance, with the horse, when your thoughts had shifted, what was the emotional shift within you? Because I'd be curious to think, if this horse can sense the emotion and they got emotional intelligence. What was the emotional shift?
For me specifically, I think I was more focused on her than my own grief in that moment. And I think she recognized that because she had already grieved. I was gone. But she knew that well, this is what I think, that we hadn't had the opportunity to go through that together. And the second that she thought I was focused on her, she was saying to me, I'm good. This is a part of life. And we both need to move on. Does that make sense?
It does. I was just writing down the word inshallah. And the word inshallah in Arabic is God's will.
Ah,
This is part of life. It's
yes.
God's will.
Yes.
And when I was in the employee assistant program and critical incident stress management in Dubai with Emirates Airline, if there was a death on the aircraft, my team and I would be deployed to counsel either the cabin crew or
Oh,
the
wow.
customers. And there was a Muslim lady who miscarried on the aircraft, and I think it was in their 7th month, so it was towards the end.
Oh,
And we debriefed the crew, and the crew were traumatized because it happened on the aircraft. And we also debriefed the passenger, and she said, Daniel, I'm fine. I will have the operation in here, but inshallah, this was God's will.
oh,
And at a very spiritual level, she had
yeah.
already come to terms. And I said, yes, inshallah. Are you okay? She says, Daniel, I've been blessed with 7 other children. This one just wasn't meant to be. So at a spiritual level for her, she accepted what it was. But for the Western crew who don't understand inshallah, they couldn't come to terms with that. They were more traumatized. But she had already released that grief and said, okay, well, let's get the operation and let's go. This is part of life.
Yeah, and I think that we can learn a lot from that. Gosh, I admire that ability to be able to truly not just understand it, but embrace that emotionally. And I think that, sometimes I honestly I think about that, in terms of how animals do that so well. And I also think about elderly people. When I was growing up, and there would be a death in the family, a passing in the family, I was always so fascinated, intrigued, and questioned how elderly people seem to handle the loss of someone so much better than us, than the younger
Mm.
generations. And I think that that comes with wisdom, that comes with time, that comes with experience, all those things. Um, but I I admire that that faith. That it really comes down to faith,
Mm.
that this is all a part of a greater path, and we're we need to be more accepting of whatever that path is in our lives.
Mm.
And I'm still not there yet. I'm still learning, but I continually learn from my animals on a regular basis. and
Mm.
and I always thank them when it is time to let them go. I always thank them for the gift that they gave me while they were
Mm.
here, because
Mm.
it is a gift, and
Mm.
everyone I cherish, but in a very, very unique and powerful way.
Mm. When our cat was coming to the end of her time. She'd had a couple of operations. The first operation was for her. The second one was definitely for us. And I said to my wife, I said, no more operations. Who's it really for? Is it for us or her? Because in the wild, she would have been taken and life would have gone on because of the way that life is. And so my wife was finding it hard to accept that. So she said, husband, would you do a tarot reading for the cat? Now, for 14 years of having this cat, if I get a tarot reading, my wife gets one, the cat gets one too. Even the other night, my wife said, can we do a tarot reading for Murray? Because we're getting get his balls chopped off this week, getting neutered. Let's ask the tarot how he feels.
I think we know.
So all the animals get the tarot reading because they're spiritual beings. And I looked at the tarot cards and I said to my wife, I said, Mina is ready to go. Her time is done. But based on the cards, I also feel that she's fulfilled her duty as a cat to this family. Her time's done. And it was hard for my wife to process that. And I looked at the cat and I looked at my wife and I said, she's not going to cross over until she's in a private place. I said, we've got to let her go. And so she was struggling that night. And I said, she's not holding on for herself. She's holding on for you. And she's not going to pass over whilst you're here. It's not that she can't handle it. You won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So eventually, as a lot of men do, they have the final say in the house. And I said, now it's my time to make the decision on this family. And as my first daughter, it's time for her to go. So I took her to the vet and I said to the vet, it's time for her to go. And would you please organise an injection? Because here in Taiwan, you just can't get the cat euthanized. You have to go through a process. And it's a collaboration with the owner and the vet.
Yeah.
And you have to have certain check marks because a lot of people are irresponsible. Just get the cat put down, put the bullet in the horse's head. It's a process here because we're respecting the animal. So I went and saw him and he said, well, Daniel, we've done everything else. You know, according to the government, according to what we've got to do, we are now at the stage where I can give her a lethal injection and we can put her out of pain. So I dropped her off there. I left with my wife and I said, he won't need to give her an injection. I said, as soon as we're out of here, she'll go. And within just a couple of minutes, he called us back and he said, I didn't need to give her the injection.
Oh my
She
gosh.
just laid down.
Oh my gosh.
And so all we had to do was to give her space. Because whilst my wife was anticipating the death, I think the cat could sense that Ninny wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah. And that's,
But when we gave her the space, she did it naturally.
again, powerful too. Like I always, when I find myself counseling pet owners at the end of life, one of the questions that I ask them is, are you keeping them here for you or them? And you don't have to answer that to me, but I want you to think about it. Are you keeping them here for you or for them? And if the answer's for you, then it's time. The kindest thing is to let them go. And very often people will confuse, oh, well, they're still eating, they're still drinking. And I said, they're doing that for you because they're wanting to take care of you,
People
to please you. And in the second they realize that you've given them permission to leave. And that we see that in humans. You know that. I mean, you can, if you're taking care of long-term patient or a parent, those situations, very often they just need permission that it's okay. We're fine, that you can leave. And usually it's within hours or less than days that they pass, or they were waiting maybe for somebody that they haven't seen in a long time, a child to come and visit. And once they do, that day they pass. And and I think that there's some similarities there. And but
Mm.
again, there's such spiritual beings, and they want to take care of us. They really just want to take care of us. And one of the things that I tell people that when they go through this grieving process, I wanted to bring back that, because I'll hear people say, "Oh, I could never have another pet because this was just so painful." And my answer to that is, if this wasn't painful, then you shouldn't have had the pet to begin with. And it's if it weren't painful, then I'd be concerned about you having another pet. So I think it's sometimes we get a little bit confused about the grieving process, and allowing ourselves to go through that, but also understanding that there are other animals out there that need your love, and that are ready to give their love to you as well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful testament to the relationship that you had with me. That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure. In how I interpret it is, the more pain you have during the grieving process just means that you've loved them really intensely. The more
Yes.
you love them, the more pain it's going to be. And if you're feeling pain, that's a sign of how much you've loved them. And if you
Yeah.
can reflect on that and go, yeah, I really did love that animal. It wasn't an animal, it was part of the family, it had a soul. And that
Yes.
hurts, because if you didn't love it, there would be no pain.
That is so true.
There'd be no
That is
pain.
so true. That's a
One,
message that I'd love everybody to hear.
one of the things that I do for a living is I profile human beings. That's part of what I do. I'm a profiler, and I've done 10,000 profiles on people around the world. And there's a particular profiling tool. I use many. I started to use a tool called the Enneagram. And I thought, this is really interesting, because when I look at humans through the Enneagram model, I also see dogs. And like, if you think of a bagel, the bagel Enneagram type is an investigator. You got the bagel at the airport sniffing all the bags. They're an investigator. They're like a police dog. And the golden retriever is a giver style Enneagram. And when I was
Yes.
profiling dogs, I went, this type of dog, the golden retriever, it's a giver. Because when you look at its behavior in the psychology and the emotional intelligence of a golden retriever, their psychology is it's better to give than to receive.
Yes.
So givers are better at giving than receiving. And when I sit down with my golden retriever, he pats me before I pat him. He's got his paw up on my leg, patting me, and he does it to everybody. And it's just this unconditional giving. When I walk down the street, he's the first person to say hello to everybody. He's an extrovert. There's no enemies. Everybody's his friends.
Yes.
We go down to the lobby. The security guards say, "Hey, Murray, how you doing?" We go past the laundromat, and we have to go inside because he wants to say hello to everybody. And the lady in the laundromat, she's tickle pink. She's on her toes. She's getting out of her seat, coming out to say hello to Murray. And then you go past the hair salon, and they're saying hello to Murray. Then you go down the street, and all the old people in their wheelchairs, he's going past and giving them some black nose. Or the kids on the way to school. So I walk my son to school, and there's about 400 kids at his school, and I'm the only person, the dad, who takes the dog. So the dogs are like, "Hey," all the kids are like, "Hey, Murray." And when I pick up Caesar from school, he's the dog that's waiting there. So all the kids get to see Murray, and they come and give him a pat. And you can
Oh,
see how excited they are. My daughter's school is just 200 meters further down the street. She has 1,500 children at her school.
oh my.
And it's me and Murray out the front, and everybody wants to talk to Murray. so he's happy, and he's giving them a good vibe. So he's the perfect giver. That's his profile.
He's providing therapy, and they don't even know it.
He loves it. He loves it. And he doesn't ask for anything in return. Never wants anything back.
Nope.
He just gives.
That's beautiful. It's better than to give than to receive. That's a good way to sum it up.
That's the giver. And he gave us his balls today. So he got neutered.
Well, I hope he feels better soon.
Yeah, I can hear him whining over my shoulder. And that was a family decision as well as we haven't had a big dog before. And what I didn't realize was that a 32-kilogram dog must have the same muscle strength as a 120-kilo human because I'm 6 foot, I'm 105 kilos, and he drags me down the street.
Yes.
And he's had the behavior of where he wants to pump everybody's legs. So the kids in the morning, Murray, stop it. My wife's like, get off me. So we made a donation today.
Made a donation. That's so funny.
Earlier today, we spoke about, is it zoooptic diseases? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Zoonotic diseases. So
Zoonotic.
yeah,
What is it?
That's the transmission of diseases from animals to humans, in essence, and that's where I always say that that human health and animal health are not separate lanes. It's the same road, so to speak. And so that's one of the things that I try to focus on is making sure that, because people think that it doesn't happen, right? They don't understand that parasites can be transmitted to children. It can lead to everything from blindness to having to have surgery. And there's certain, obviously we all know about rabies, right? But that's the big one, right? That everybody's aware of. But there are many, many different communicable diseases out there that are transmitted, both from our pets, but also, birds, other wildlife, things like that. And so that's one of the things that I talk about a lot is, food safety, public safety, infectious diseases, family medicine. I've had people that got, external parasites from their pets, certain types of mites and things like that, or from even a hotel room, and their doctors wouldn't acknowledge it. And like Sarcoptes is a mite, and it's very very intense itching if you get that. And I've found myself having to have conversations with human physicians to say you need to check for this, because we've identified this either on this pet and or directly correlated with frankly, you were talking about traveling all over the world, flight attendants in particular. I've seen them come back from a trip and start showing signs of some sort of a pruritic or itchy condition. And I said, well, I think you need to get checked for either this or that, depending on what we're talking about. And so it is something that we can't ignore. Internal parasites are they're everywhere. They're it's not just here. They're everywhere. They're a little bit different in different parts of the world. But it's still something that we need to not ignore, and we need to do a better job about educating people about what those are, and depending on the environment that you're living in, and how do we protect ourselves, how do we protect our families. And nowadays it's a lot easier than it used to be, because of the different products and medicines that we have out there. But it does still happen. And and it's one of those things that we need to make sure that we're continuing to send those messages out, and making, many countries are still riddled with rabies as an example. And we don't necessarily talk about that the way we should, and address that the way that we should. So, but even in a family home, it is something that I can't stress enough, that if you're going to have pets in the family, and you're going to have particularly children, then there needs to be a process where we talk about the to-dos and what we don't do, and you know, and how we prevent those things from happening. It's one of the reasons why, you know, leptospirosis is another really good example. And it's it is something that, there's different forms of leptospirosis, but it's transmitted from the urine of wildlife, almost any wildlife. And if a dog or a cat drinks from something that, whether it's a stream, a pond, river, or sitting water, they can contract that, and that can be transmitted to humans. And depending on the type of lepto, it can cause liver failure, kidney failure. You know, it's something that I'm not. Sometimes I feel like, you know, on the human side, they're not looking at those as potential, because those are things that are very often they're treatable if you recognize them soon enough. If you don't, they're life threatening. And so that's where I feel like the human side and the veterinary side need to be collaborating more about, you know, how do we explore, how do we prevent, how do we acknowledge, how do we treat those different types of conditions. Avian influenza is an example, where that, you know, that's evolving across different species. And so those are all things that well, you don't want to put your blinders on. You know, you just want to be aware and be safe. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have pets. It just means you need to be aware. Like you were saying, going back to the French bulldog example, know what you're getting into and understand that, you know, so that you're better prepared to handle it and prevent problems before they happen when it comes to medicine and taking care of ourselves.
I've observed other people's behaviors when it comes to interacting with their animals. And one of the things that always freaks me out is how some people allow their dogs to lick them on the face and around the mouth and share food with them. And I look at that, I'm going, oh my gosh, I couldn't think of anything worse. So in our family, our dog goes outside. The paws are cleaned when it comes home. The dog goes to the salon every 2 weeks and gets shampooed. The French bulldog went every 2 weeks to get shampooed. And our animals are really clean. But other people, the way that they interact with their animals and let them lick them, I'm always thinking that can't be healthy. And even with children, the dog's licking the kid's toy, it's in the kid's mouth, and I'm going, oh no.
That's thank you for saying that, and I'm glad that you said it and I didn't, because it is a concern. And you know what they're coming in contact with outside, and you know it is I always tell people, you know, you've got to pay attention to this. And you know, this is where I have to touch on the raw food diets that are becoming more popular. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but I have a very strong belief that if you're going to choose to feed something like that to your pet, and then allow them to lick or interact with your children, then you need to understand that there's some significant bacterial risk there, whether it's, you know, E. coli, salmonella, depending on the circumstances and what we're talking about. There's and the way we handle the food, the way we handle the prep, you know, all of that matters. And people have been hospitalized, particularly children, because they're not necessarily going to run and wash their hands, right? They're not necessarily going to stop your dog from licking them in the face, you know, and that's a little bit tougher to manage. So thank you for bringing that up. It is a concern. Am I going to say I've never had a dog lick me in the face? No, I can't say that. But it is something that I think that we all need to be at least aware of what can happen, and it does happen.
I know the behavior of my dog. If I watched it, it's licking its balls, licking its ass. It's trying to eat the dead mouse on the side of the street.
Right.
It's putting its nose on the pole where 10 other dogs have pissed. Just the nature of the animal. And in our house, my wife's very, very strict with the animals. The bowls get cleaned daily. There's no raw food. All the foods, we'll call it poached or boiled, so it's nice and soft. They get their vitamins, and it's always filtered water. And when we walk the dog down the street, we don't let it eat things out of the bush, and we don't let it drink from the ponds, because here in Taiwan we've got a very humid climate, and we know that if we wouldn't drink it, we shouldn't. If we don't drink it, the animal shouldn't be drinking it either.
That's one of
Our house,
the,
our floor, we wash it 2 or 3 times a day because we want the dog to be healthy, but we want to remain healthy too.
I have to ask based on that, do your shops or restaurants put water bowls outside for dogs to drink from?
Taiwan, not so much, but what they do really well is if you come to the restaurant, they'll give the dog its own paper bowl, a disposable one. So when I go into a restaurant, they will give me a paper bowl, not a shared communal dog bath, a bowl, an individual paper bowl, and they will serve the dog. So in our restaurants here, a lot of people, when they go down the street, they put their dog or their cat in a pram. So we will go down the streets and there's people pushing their cat in a pram, or there's people with a backpack on and they got their cat inside the backpack, or people will put their cat on the shoulder and walk down the street. So
Wow.
Taiwanese are fanatical about their animals. So the pets are welcomed in, but they'll serve the animal as well. Yeah,
Oh
they're
my
good.
gosh, I love that idea because I always tell people when they ask me, what do you think about those, those communal bowls that they put outside, for pets to drink out of? And I say, well, I wouldn't drink out of it, and I'm not going to let my pet drink out of it. I think it's a nice gesture, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's safe. And so I love that idea of a disposable, paper bowl. That's again, a really, really good idea. I may steal that if that's okay.
Do it, do it. Everybody loves Murray here, so I live on a beautiful river, and I walk down the street, and all the people with the restaurants know Murray, all the cafe owners, so they come out and say hello. they, they
Oh,
they want him to come into their restaurant or their cafe because he's got a good vibe, and
ugh.
that's the giver.
Oh my gosh,
He's next
that's
to me now.
beautiful.
Dr. Pam, thank you so much for joining us today. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to our next one. Thanks for being here.
The same here. This has been a real treat, and I've learned so much from you today. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope we get to do it again.
We'll definitely do it again. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay.